What's up, Steelers fans? Welcome back to another episode of Around the Burgh. I'm your host, Mitchell Wolf, here with my co-host, Shane Kubis. We're going to preview the Steelers NFL draft coming up this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. We'll also talk about how the re-signing of Terrell Edmunds affects their draft strategy. But in the meantime, Shane, how you doing tonight?
I feel a little bit better going into the draft with that Edmonds signing because now I'm not
Yes.
as worried they might either reach/need a just safety in general early on. So opens things up a little bit more. But
Yeah, that's the thing you want, is you just want flexibility. You don't
yeah,
want obvious needs going into the draft, because then teams can take advantage of that.
yes,
And that's something I want to get into a little bit later, but
right.
that's the big thing for them. So as you said, Steelers re-signed Terrell Edmunds to a 1-year $2.5 million
Yeah,
contract, basically vet minimum, which is a fantastic deal for them. They
yeah.
couldn't even
I don't understand, but like I'm just gonna chalk it up to the Steelers being the Steelers. So
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they could have just given him more money, just like to be nice, like
right, honestly, like or maybe that's what's been the holdup is like he wasn't getting the offers he wanted, obviously, and like so it's like, all right, well, you can come back for this much. And he's like, all right.
Yeah, I might. If I was him, I might think about finding some new agents. To be honest, this is
Yeah, because like regardless of what your opinion of Edmonds is, he's not a vet minimum player at his age and position. Like, he just isn't.
No,
Like it just, yeah. So interesting deal, but it does open up a lot of flexibility, not for only for the draft, but now they kind of get to see him another year, see if he can keep improving as well, and then decide if they want to keep him long term from there too.
yeah,
So
and like I said, like they could still sign Tyrod Matthew if they don't draft, and like
yeah,
there's still enough
they still
cap
could.
room, honestly, which is
Yeah,
crazy.
because his deal is so cheap, it's kind of
Yeah,
ridiculous. Yeah,
exactly.
So yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Other than that, that's pretty much the only news we have. The other thing was that today the Steelers, like top brass of Kevin Colbert,
Yeah.
Mike Tomlin, had their pre-draft press conference. A lot of boilerplate stuff.
Yeah.
We'll take the best player available unless there's a need and there's a guy that we like more, or there's a need that we have and we like this guy about the same, then we'll go with the need. It's like, okay, well, yeah, we know.
So you're a GM of an NFL
Yeah,
team. Gotcha. All
exactly.
Right, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, not to expect anything else from them, but still, it's kind of like, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. They talked about like how, getting a quarterback is extremely important, obviously. They said that the passing of Dwayne Haskins doesn't affect how their strategy moving forward. Pretty boilerplate stuff.
Yeah, that's, again, we're not going to get any more out of him. I mean, he did make a kind of a strange comment about, like, specifically about trading up and down. Like, I think you mentioned pick 7 specifically is like exploring that. And I'm like, pick 7. Okay. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, outside of that, nothing too interesting.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Steelers have a relationship with the Rooneys that goes back a very long time.
Yeah.
Interesting that maybe he meant 6 because they obviously have the relationship with the Panthers, and that makes a little more sense. The thing that I found interesting was that Kevin Colbert mentioned that they used to do an exercise where they would like try to mock out the first round like a few times, like see what people do. And basically they scrapped that, saying like, this is dumb. Like there's no real purpose for doing that.
No, it's too hard. I mean, as much as they have is more information than any of us ever could have about it. Like it's still, I mean, other gyms don't really know what other teams are going to do unless they've already talked to them about possible moves or whatever. Like it's not going to really do you a lot of good, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, and like the opportunity cost of it is not great, because it's like, okay, we could spend all this time doing this, but you're going to be in the same place you are if you don't do it, because you could do it, and then like, what if Aaron Rodgers starts falling, or Laramie Tunsil posts a video of him in a gas mask right as the draft begins,
just a couple examples, right?
Yeah, nothing specific that's ever happened before, ever.
No.
But yeah, so I thought that was kind of interesting just to get, that was like we said, like this is all pretty boilerplate stuff, but that's an interesting little window into their process, which you don't get a ton of those, especially around this time where it's so close to the draft and teams are more about like putting out lies and rumors and smoke screens than they are about talking truth.
Yeah, and I mean, this draft is kind of unique in the sense that like not many people seem to have any idea what's really going to happen at this point. Like mocks have been like, I try to do mocks occasionally that I want to post, and I just stop and I'm like, this is not going to work.
Yeah,
like
I mean, the fact that we just today the odds shifted from Aiden Hutchinson to Trayvon Walker as the projected number 1 overall pick according to Vegas books. Like we're like less than a business week out from the draft, and we're getting a change at the top of the board. That's just
insane. This is not something that happens. It really does. I mean, I don't remember the last time there was this much uncertainty about the first pick. Maybe like 2017, maybe. Like even then, it's not the same. Not really
18. Honestly, 18 with Baker and all the
guess
it was like
that's true too. But we kind of knew
it was all
a little bit right.
It was
we did
all
know
quarterbacks.
It was going to be a quarterback.
We knew it was going to be a quarterback. It was, and it kind of just shifted between like really three guys, I would say, as to who would be the number one.
Right, and like you can kind of say the same thing this year because we expect it to be a pass rusher.
Yeah,
but at the same time, not nearly as much certainty about who is really in the mix for that.
But that's crazy in and of itself that it's not a quarterback.
Yeah, because normally that's kind of the hang up is like you have a couple guys that are in the same category there, and then you have to decide, okay, who is our actual guy here we want to go with, and not this year. So
so we're gonna do this. We're gonna do our preview a little differently. So obviously we spent a ton of time this whole offseason talking about the draft, so we've made our thoughts known. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a little segment I like to call Dreams and Nightmares. Shout out Meek Mill, where we're gonna go through each pick the Steelers have, and basically we're gonna say what our dream is for it, like our ideal pick, our ideal decision, our nightmare scenario, and then the reality, what we actually think is gonna happen. So Steelers' first pick is round 1, number 20 overall. Shane, what is your ideal dream situation for this pick?
So the ideal is one of the DBs that I think could possibly fall, because this is a dream, but I still want to keep it within a little bit of realism. So there's been a lot of talk about Hamilton. How early is he going to go? Still think he's worth a top 10 pick in this class, but it's very likely not going to happen from what we've seen.
Top 2 in my opinion, but yeah.
Right, exactly, yeah. But I wanted to be a little conservative and then McDuffie, Trent McDuffie out of Washington. I really like him just in general as a prospect. I think he'd give us a lot of what Hayden was really good at
for a long time. Say that.
And similar size profiles. I've talked about him on here before too. So one of those two falls. I know that we should be good at corner this year, but McDuffie's better than any of the guys we have right now, especially long term.
Yeah,
and I'd like to bring him in if he's available. If not, a trade down, I think, is still the best thing for them to do.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat. I don't think McDuffie's going to be there.
I don't think so.
I read a lot of stuff about the Eagles taking him earlier. So
I think best case scenario he makes it to 15, and that's the latest.
Yeah. But mine is Kyle Hamilton as well, just because for some reason he's falling down the board again. I mean, like people are saying athletic testing, whatever. And then if that doesn't happen, then trade down, into the late 20s, get some late day 2 capital so you can get some good value picks there to get some depth players. We pretty much have the same nightmare scenario.
Yeah,
and that involves trading into the top 10 for a quarterback, namely Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, I mean, once you get past 10, I think you get past nightmare territory more like I'd rather them not, but the cost isn't going to be as ridiculous to do it. So I think if you do get to like 11, 12, 13-ish, that area, and you want to move up and grab somebody because you're worried someone else might, or if you're worried about the Saints or whoever, then it's like, okay, I still don't think it's worth it in this class. But if you do that for a Willis, a guy that has a ceiling that if he reaches could make this team a lot better, then fine. But it's getting to that top 10 is just so hard to do without giving up a ton of capital.
Yeah, I think if he makes it past Cincinnati, then they're kind of out of the woods. At least talking Malik Willis, like Kenny Pickett to some extent, but I really just don't think that he fits what they want to do.
Yeah, Carolina, I feel like they should prioritize building up that offensive line to the point where they can actually evaluate a quarterback, right?
And that's the trade that a lot of people think.
Right, that makes the most sense.
Because that puts the Steelers in a really good position. They'd have to give up probably a first round next year and then a day 2 pick this year because the Panthers don't have any picks between rounds 1 and 5. So they need capital to help build up that offensive line. So I'm not sure many of the tackles they would want would be there at 20 though. That's the one issue because you're kind of hoping Cross or Penning falls, and I don't really foresee that happening.
No, I feel like as much as I don't think Penning is a true first rounder, he's gonna go a lot earlier than that just because of the drop off of tackle after the Cross with those guys. Like it's just gonna happen, I think.
Right. So then we're also in agreement.
Yeah.
We think it's gonna be Desmond Ridder.
Everything is pointing in this direction, right? Because he's the guy that's most likely graded high with what they want internally and likely to also possibly be there. Like he's probably the guy that you don't have to move up for and that they're going to like as much as I don't. like him, I think that is the most realistic pick based on what we've seen this offseason.
Yeah, so Ritter actually ended up being my QB1 in this cycle. Because I recognize the accuracy concerns, but for me, I think his ceiling is like a top. He's in that Tannehill Cousins range.
Okay.
I think, and that's ceiling again. Like,
right.
Like Malik Willis is his top 8, in the, top 10 best quarterbacks in the league, no question. But I think his floor is a lot higher where, if he isn't, if he isn't everything you hope, like he's still a competent starter. Whereas if you go to Malik Willis's floor, it's not in the NFL.
Yeah.
So that's just my, like, and I get teams want to take the home run swing. I'm just saying for me, like, I'm being more conservative, even though I have nothing to lose.
Those things, like, I definitely can't really argue with that point at all. So like if you're focusing on the combination of like a ceiling that's a decent starting caliber quarterback or a mid-tier guy and kind of getting up into that just above mid-tier range versus a guy that could very much reach higher than that, but may not play in the league very long with Willis. Especially with a pick in the 20s, like I would still rather. Now again, he's not going to be there, I can't imagine. So you might not have this option anyway. But if I'm picking at 20 and I have the option between them two, I'm definitely taking Willis because I'm taking that shot. But at the same time, Ritter would give you I'm pretty confident that he will be able to play in the NFL. I just don't know if he'll be good enough to warrant first round pick.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. Yeah, that's the thing is like the reality is just really not good either way, unfortunately.
No, it's probably not. No, I don't think so.
All right, let's move into the second round, which is pick 52, assuming there's no trades either way. My ideal is Travis Jones, and I'm not sure this is. It's about as likely as Kyle Hamilton, I think, which is why I'm putting it in the dream section because
fair enough. Yeah,
there's been like bits and pieces of first round hype. I'm not sure it's legitimate, given that if Jordan Davis is like kind of falling down the board, I don't see why Travis Jones would be rising. Given that they're relatively similar prospects, but Davis is better in almost every way. So maybe like we said, the quarterbacks might get pushed up. That pushes the rest of the board down. Some funky picks happen. There's going to be a lot of receivers taken. Maybe this pushes a guy like Jones down, and he falls to Steelers at 52, and they get their nose tackle of the future because Tyson Aluwala obviously is back, but he's old. Stephon Tuitt is still a question mark. Cam Hayward is definitely getting up there as well. They have some backup developmental pieces, but getting a guy like Travis Jones who can be a day one plug and play starter if need be, I think that'd be a really, again, very lucky dream scenario for them.
Yeah, I mean, if he falls to 52, he's going to be, if not the best player available, one of the 5. I just don't see how that's not the case. So, like, with our defensive line depth, like you said, we have guys for this year, especially if Aluwala is able to stay healthy this year. But after that, that's when the questions start happening, especially because we don't know what Tuitt's future is still, too. He would definitely be a big piece to have, regardless of kind of how that all shakes out. So,
yeah,
for me, and this is mostly because I did a mock a while ago with him as the second round pick, and I think this is more of a dream, more so because I would think it's awesome if they do it, not so much that it's not going to be possible for them to do it. But Zion McCollum out of Sam Houston State, I am really big believer in him, not only because he is technically, at least by athletic testing standards, the greatest athlete we've seen at cornerback in the past however many years, but I do think that there's a lot to work with already there and then with that athleticism factored in and having a chance to sit because he won't have to play much as a rookie if they don't want to play him much. I think he could be a huge addition to the defense if he works out.
Yeah, McCollum is really fun, and it's kind of annoying because I think that taking him with their second round pick would be overdrafting him, but I don't think he makes it to their third
kind
round
of the
pick.
thing. It's like I don't think he's going to get drafted this early at this point. I think he is more of like a guy you start looking at once the third round starts. But I think it'd be a really good fit for them because I just want to see them really invest in a corner that doesn't just have the athletic upside, but I think he does show a lot of things that they would like and that he can improve while having a chance to sit and learn for a little bit.
Yeah. And, you mentioned testing as the best cornerback ever. And, people are like, oh, it's hyperbole. It's not. He's the number one.
That's exactly. Yeah.
According to Relative Athletic Score from Kent Lee Platt, he is first out of 2001 cornerbacks with these testing numbers from 1987 to 2022 with a perfect 10.
Exactly.
And that's right alongside Byron Jones, who obviously had one of the greatest all-time combines as well. Let me see him. Where'd he go? Okay, yeah, he's he's right there. So
I do see that flash on film too, like that athleticism. That's kind of what makes me interested in him more because you see a lot of guys, sometimes they'll test like crazy athletes and you go watch them and you're like, okay, I don't really see, 4.3 speed. I don't see this ability to explode out of the, whatever. With him, I do see it a good bit, and that makes me feel like he has the opportunity to grow in a defense and have a chance to be a really good starter for them.
Yeah. All right, let's get into our nightmares now. Mine is Matt Corral, who is a quarterback prospect that I just really don't like. I don't think he necessarily fits what the Steelers want to do. I think that he would be a long-term project that has a pretty similar floor to Malik Willis, but you tack on maturity concerns and a pretty concerning injury profile where I think that he wouldn't be able to physically survive the AFC North.
No, I don't think so. Because a lot of the value he brought was his ability to be kind of a runner at college, and he's not going to be able to have that impact in the NFL, at least not if he wants to play more than 2 years.
Yeah, exactly.
It's hard to buy into that for sure.
Yeah, and I think he's been the one QB I think that they've been connected to the least, maybe aside from Carson Strong. So I'm not super worried about this, especially if they take a quarterback in the first round, which I've kind of come around on that for the purposes of if they don't take one in the first round, it'll create a scenario similar to what we were fearing with the safety in that if they don't, teams will be like, all right, they have to take one on day 2 so we can trade up in front of them and nab whoever they want. So that's why, I think not taking one in the first round and then waiting, trying to see if you can grab Sam Howell on day 2 is concerning. So I've kind of come around on that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like at this point, if you do want to come away with a quarterback that you think has a chance to be the starter long term, do it on day 1.
Yeah.
If you're not interested in doing that, or the guys that are there aren't who you want, then don't do it at all. Don't take somebody that where their expectation is going to be that they start at some point.
Yeah.
I would say so.
Let's hear your nightmare.
So for me, I don't hate this player, but I think drafting him this high would just be a mistake. And it's Justin Ross from Clemson.
Yeah.
And at one point, this guy was one of the highest profile receiver prospects a couple years ago before the injuries hit and everything else. And his juice just isn't there anymore. You can tell he doesn't have the same athleticism that he had prior to the injuries. And I think he could still be a decent pro, but this is somebody you try to take in the 4th, 5th round and hope that he works out. If you're going to take an athletically limited receiver this high, I'd rather go like a David Bell or something like that. I think is an actual better receiver right now than Ross would be.
Yeah, and I think Ross has kind of like Corral because of major injury concerns. Even if the neck thing is past, which it really isn't, it's still a concern. He's had a bunch of other injuries that he's tried to play through as well. So, other than that, great player. When he's on the field and healthy, he's awesome. Just, concerning medical profile there. We'll go to reality now. Nick Cross from Maryland is a name you have later, but he seems to be rising very fast.
That's the problem.
And I feel like he meets a lot of criteria the Steelers like. He's from Maryland, which is a program the team really likes to draft from for some reason. He's an underclassman. He's a versatile safety. So, you can have a nice 3 safety package with him, Minka, and Edmonds. So with how fast he's rising, granted, the Steelers aren't necessarily a team that usually drafts those kind of shooting star guys that come on late in the process, but he fits a lot. He checks a lot of boxes for them. So I could see that happening in the second round.
Yeah, I'm and just as kind of like you mentioned, a quick jump forward, I do have him as my reality pick for the 3rd round, and that's I'm hoping that the hype isn't quite as much as we've seen it. Also, he might just get pushed because of being a safety. Honestly, I'm kind of just hoping that teams don't view him as a day 1 impact, so they don't willing to draft him until later, and the Steelers are able to get him. But for me, I think that in this spot, either a receiver. Not Justin Ross, but a receiver of some kind. It kind of depends on who would be left on the board. I don't know if Sky Moore.
I had John Mechie here at one point.
Yeah, Mechie.
That's one. Yeah,
one of the, somebody in that range of somewhere in the 7, 8, 9 ranked receivers, somewhere around there. Or if an offensive lineman that's really good upside is falling, and they want to add to that group, especially if a tackle's there, like a Raymond or something, if he falls really far, whatever, just to have more depth at tackle and a guy that maybe can improve over time while you have the guys you have. So something like that.
That's possible. Like I said, the second round is really when they kind of just try to find somebody that's falling, which is kind of what happened in the last few years, especially with those receiver picks. So
the receiver picks.
That makes sense. All right, move on to round 3. This one is my dream is, and I don't think they would do it, but I think it would be awesome.
Yeah, it would be fun.
But it's James Cook, the running back from Georgia, who's my running back 3 in this class. I think he's fantastic. He can basically, like, you can get him and Najee on the field at the same time, and he can do a bunch of stuff as a receiver. You can use him. You can almost use him as like in the Ray McLeod role as well.
That's kind of what I would see him, and based on how we used guys last year, that's probably how I'd see him used, because I don't see him as a runner much as far as taking a lot of carries. But
yeah. In terms of this team, yeah,
especially this team. But I think that if you get him the ball in space or just use him as a receiver, he's so fluid. Yeah, and he has legit receiver skills as a running back.
Like this was the top, and now it's even more topical. But this was the thing people have been talking about for months. If you want to draft the next Deebo Samuel, this is the next Deebo Samuel.
Right, that's more realistic.
Because a lot of the other guys people put up there are like really tiny guys that can take some jet sweeps. No, like James Cook is a running back, but like there was a route he ran, like a sluggo double move.
I think I know what you're talking
about. In the playoff, and just absolutely cooked one of Michigan's corners, and it was insane. Or actually, no, I think it was Tennessee. It was Tennessee.
But, I remember. No, I think that's the one.
Incredible route that he's so like he can do a lot of stuff, and also like Steelers love pedigree guys. Get another brother. Brothers in the NFL. That's their whole thing.
Yeah,
so James Cook would really fit that profile well. So that's why he's my dream pick. Who's yours in round 3?
I actually have Alec Pierce because I think that his combine combined with the way he plays, I think is going to push him up a little bit past where we're going to be picking the 3rd round. So if he was still there,
I think we're right in a sweet spot for him.
I honestly would be surprised if the Colts do even have the pick in the 70s that they have, that he makes it past them. He feels like a receiver they would like. That's kind of where I'm projecting him right now. Is that I think it's 72 or something like that.
Yeah, I'm on the wrong page, but that does sound right. He just have. I don't think 73. So you're close, but he does have Colts vibes big time.
He does. So like that's where I actually think he's going to end up. Is there? That's my best guess for him. But if he's there at 84, he profiles as a great outside receiver that would allow, as I've talked about a lot here, Claypool to play more inside and take more advantage of what he does well right now as a receiver, and just kind of complete what this receiver room I think what they want it to be right now. So that would be my pick for sure.
Yeah. Why don't you go back to back with your nightmare since it's at the same position?
So I don't hate Wan'Dale Robinson, but
sounds like you do.
Right. But I don't think that. I think he would end up just being like a Ray McLeod type of player in this offense. And I don't want to draft that as the first receiver.
Pick, no way.
No. I don't want to draft that as the guy we add to this receiver room, because I don't see us, if we take one in the 3rd, I don't see us adding anyone else that can be a starting caliber player anywhere else in the draft. Right. So he's a fun player, but I think he's going to be more of a gadgety type of guy in the NFL for the most part. And it would just be one early, but also that role is what he'd play, and we don't need to spend a 3rd round pick.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. Mine is kind of similar as well, but it's a cornerback. It's Marcus Jones, who is a 5'8", he's like 5'8", 5'7", 170-pound cornerback. And I'll grant it that he's one of the most prolific return specialists in college football history, 9 return touchdowns in his career, which is crazy. And he is very similar to Mike Hilton as a corner. Like, has a lot of dog in him. He's not afraid to go against bigger receivers in coverage, and he's probably better as a coverage friend than Mike Hilton is. But with what this team needs at cornerback, I just really don't want them to use it on a guy like that. Like, they need somebody who can play press on the outside against NFL receivers, which is something I would not want this guy to be doing. And I get the return. Like, when I kind of found out that he's going to go probably on day 2, I was pretty surprised, given that he's going to have to play nickel in the NFL. But I just really hope they don't. And I don't really know why they would. Like, he doesn't fit a lot of their profiles, but it's it was kind of hard to find a nightmare in the 3rd round. So
right, because at that point, there's a lot of really good players in this area that are realistic. So, but yeah, I agree, because that's one of the reasons why McCollum was my dream pick in the 2nd round, because he gives us all of the attributes that I want them to target in a corner for the future, especially. So
so you already said your reality for day 3 of Nick Cross. So I'll just go back to back with my reality, and it's Khalil Shakir, the wide receiver from Boise State, who he's kind of like a bigger Wan'Dale Robinson in that he does a lot in their offense in terms of getting the ball on screens, jet sweeps. I don't think they put him in the backfield much, but he runs a lot of different routes, really great body control and catch in the air. He didn't test particularly well, but I'm not even sure if he makes it to their 3rd round pick. But I just really like his game. I really like his ability to make those spectacular catches down the field along the sidelines. So again, a guy, and he could even play the slot too if you want. I think he can play all 3 receiver roles decently well. So I like his versatility that he would add to this team. And then he can also use him on returns, which would be interesting.
Yeah, he's a player that I like a lot too. I do wonder if he'll be there, which is the main thing, because I see a run of receivers like mid to late first and then late second into the third. Like I think that's kind of where you're going to see a lot of the run on those guys.
Yeah.
So like he might get picked up before then. Like I could see like a Chicago taking him with one of their like third round picks or something, or whatever, that somewhere in that range. But if he makes it, that would be a fun player to add for sure.
Yeah. All right. I'll let you take the floor for your round 4 dream, who I know is one of your favorite guys.
Yeah. Pierre Strong Jr. just is such a dynamic player in space, and he's so different than what we get from Najee that I would just love to see those guys play off of each other in the NFL. And I think you could give him enough carries that one, you can get Harris's carries down a little bit, hopefully keep him fresher during the season, and also get a big play element for the offense that you don't have a running back really right now. I just like everything he brings. Like, even if that ability to make people miss comes down a good bit coming from FCS to the NFL, I think as long as it's not a severe drop off in that attribute, he's still going to be a very good player for them as a backup.
Yeah, and he kind of, like we talked about with Cook, he kind of brings that different element to the running game that they need.
For sure.
So my dream for round 4 is Charlie Kohler, the tight end out of Iowa State. And I think tight end is a underrated need for this team, just because they want to have another guy that can play next to Freiermuth. And Gentry had some nice moments towards the end of the year, but I just don't think he's really a long-term answer. Kohler is a very interesting prospect because he was used in a Travis Kelce-like role in Iowa State's offense, and he's not the best blocker, obviously, but they do ask him to block a good bit just because they run almost their entire offense out of 13 and 12 personnel with lots of tight ends on the field, which is weird.
Yeah, it's first, especially in the Big 12.
Yeah, and he's not it's weird. I think he tested really well, but then some of the numbers were reported as false. So
I don't know for sure with him because he looks really fluid on tape.
Yeah,
his athleticism pops. But
it's funny because I watched him and I thought it was good, but I've heard conflicting reports about that too, where it's some people think he's a good athlete, other people think he's not. So that's what made all the testing really weird. So it's just hard to know. But I also really like that he was, I can't remember if he won or if he was just a finalist for the Campbell Trophy, which is the academic Heisman. And he had
he's very...
He had 3.99 GPA in mechanical engineering, which I just enjoy nerd players.
Right,
So I would like to add him. I think he'd be another interesting person to add to this offense.
He'd be a lot of fun, I think, for
sure.
Yeah,
him and Freiermuth would be a really cool combo. Our nightmares are once again aligned. In that we're worried about the Steelers using a early day 3 pick on a quarterback without much upside. And we both have Bailey Zappi. I have Jack Cohn as another possibility, and you have Carson Strong as another possibility. But we'll just stick with Zappi for now, who, is your Cody Kessler type of quarterback that's just a backup and, can come in every once in a while and not do much.
I like Zappi in the sense that I think he's going to play in the NFL for a long time as a backup. But if you're going to take a quarterback anywhere from the 4th round up in this class, you better hope it's a guy that has starting potential. I just don't see that with him. I don't think he has the physical tools for it. And taking him in this spot when there's going to be really good players still, that's my biggest concern with it. And even Strong, I like Strong a lot. If he was healthy, if I was confident his game was good, he'd be either 1 or 2 in this class for me as a quarterback, just because the mobility thing is real regardless of how healthy he is, but he's just such a good thrower of the football. And I think he was good at manipulating the pocket when he was healthy. So, but at this point, not knowing what his knee is going to look like, and maybe obviously teams have a better idea of this. If he goes this early or earlier, then that probably means he's all right for the most part. But it would feel like too much of a risk when there's going to be still good players on the board.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I have Jack Cohn there too. He's more of a also profiles as a career backup, which is why I just don't really want to waste because you can still get good starters in the 4th round. Steelers have proven that, getting guys like James Conner is one, and Josh Dobbs, was a 4th round pick, but he wasn't a starter, but he was a valuable member of the team.
He was,
as a backup, but you could argue that they could have used that pick a lot better with a player that would have actually contributed more stats. I think actually Connor might have been a 3rd round pick and Cam Sutton was the 4th.
Connor was a 3rd, yeah.
Okay. So, but Cam Sutton, that's a valuable starter. So I would prefer not to use that on back quarterback that is probably going to end up being your 3rd or even 4th quarterback at this season, especially if you draft one earlier.
Exactly.
In our realities, we both have them taking running backs. Mine is Damien Pierce from Florida, who I was really impressed by him, but he's an older player, but he's very light on the tread because Florida just didn't want to use him.
Yeah, they didn't play him very much, which is still very weird to me. But
he's an absolute he's like kind of like Marshawn Lynch the way he runs. Honestly,
he does run in the same way of I want to hurt you.
Yeah, he just wants to hurt his opponents. But versatile in terms of a pass blocker, receiver. So if you want to spell Najee on third downs, he can do that. He can also spell him on early downs because he's a nice, compact, powerful runner. So I like Damien Pierce as their reality 4th round pick. Who is your reality 4th round pick?
I love that idea for them for sure. Cause that backfield is just going to be really scary for teams to deal with in general. Mm-hmm. But when you mentioned Connor a minute ago, which is kind of why I think it's funny. My pick is Tyler Algier out of BYU. And that is my comp for,
that's a lot of people's comp.
Yeah. And it's just, again, not a lot of athleticism to speak of, not a lot of, but very, especially with him, he's a very smart runner. He's very good with his vision. He can get through holes. He has power as a size, all the type of things that has made Connor pretty successful for the most part in his career when he's been healthy. Algier has a lot of the same attributes, and I think they, despite losing Connor for agency and not offering him a deal, I think they like that type of player.
Yeah, I agree.
And he would fit that role, I think, for them too.
The thing with Algier worries me is that, will he just be another Benny Snell, though?
That's the concern, yeah, because I think the thing that separates him is his instincts and intelligence as a runner, vision, but it's very possible that he ends up in the same mold as him. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. Okay, so Steelers do not have a 5th round pick, so we're skipping right to basically the 6th round, kind of towards the end. And this is where picks kind of don't matter, where you're kind of just throwing darts at a board, hoping somebody sticks. So my dream is a personal crush of mine. It's DJ Davidson, who's a nose tackle from Arizona State. And when I watched him after Jordan Davis, and I thought, if you miss out on Jordan Davis and don't want to spend a premium pick on a nose tackle, go after this guy. And I don't know if he'll be there around 6 because I think I have him as a 5th rounder. But
he's 6'3",
327. He's big. He's really powerful. Surprisingly nimble for a guy his size. Maybe not Davis level, but still pretty good. And again, I don't know if he'd be a starter long term, but as teams move into more nickel sets, if this guy's your rotational nose, I think he'd be really good in that role.
Yeah, especially if we don't address it early in the draft, which I doubt unless it is with a Travis Jones if he falls or whatever. So, and I'm kind of in the same boat as I just have D-line in general, get some D-line depth, whether it's a guy that's more of 3 technique or if it's going to be more of, or 5 technique specifically, or nose tackle, someone in that range that could just add to that group because of the uncertainty with a couple guys right now. So,
yeah. So we also are similar for our nightmare of having offensive line. And I'm curious as to why you put that as yours, because I have a specific reason for mine. I want to know if we're aligned on this.
For me, I just don't think that there's going to be any guys left at this point in the draft that actually have upside as a potential guy that's going to be able to play snaps for you. I think at this point you're taking shots, which again, everybody is in the 6th, 7th round, but I think all the guys that have potential to be even high quality backups are probably going to get scooped up by this point because of the drop off at talent at tackle, especially after the first couple picks. So.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case in this class where there is a sharp drop off and towards the end of day 3, where maybe mid day 3, after the 5th round, it's just the guys have a lot of issues technically, so it's just not really where you want to invest. I also have a general take that I really just don't like using day 3 picks on offensive linemen because I think they never work out.
Because all the guys that show the tools necessary, even just the tools, because some guys, especially nowadays, there's a lot of guys you're projecting a lot with. But most guys that have the tools.
I feel like the hit rate, or at least getting what you're paying for out of UDFA offensive linemen, is just as good, if not better, than round 6 and 7 offensive linemen. Round 5 might be the breaking point, but definitely round 6 and 7, no need to do it. So just don't waste it on offensive line. So I picked tight end earlier, but you picked one in here round 6. Who is your tight end pick?
I have Jake Ferguson, and I don't necessarily think he's going to fall this far because I think he's a pretty solid all-around player.
Yes, that is Jake Ferguson in a nutshell. Just solid all around. Everything.
Watching him as a Wisconsin fan,
yes, yeah,
he's a Wisconsin tight end, right? Yes. He's He's going to probably be a really good pro for a long time. You're not going to probably, unless you're a hardcore NFL fan or he plays for your team for a long time, or you're a Wisconsin fan like me, you're probably not going to remember him necessarily after his career is done. But he's going to be an impactful player. He can be your tight end too. Stuff like that. That's the type of player that if we don't go earlier, like you said with Kohler, that I think would be a good addition to the tight end room with us. So
when we did our tight end rankings on my draft pod, I was saying about Ferguson, like he's going to catch between 300 and 500 yards every season, like between 20 and 30 catches and between 3 and 5 touchdowns, and it's never going to leave those parameters. It's always going to be right in that range.
I wouldn't be surprised. He'll get open for you in the short part of the field. Like he do some stuff as a receiver, but he's a good blocker too. He does that very well for Wisconsin's offense. Like he would be a guy that, like, especially if Freiermuth got hurt or something, or just as the tight end too, like he'd be able to come in and get the job done. It might not be spectacular, but you won't be watching film and go, man, that guy can't play. You know, like it's kind of what it comes down to for that.
Yeah. So my reality for round 6, this might actually be a little even closer to a dream, is Amari Barno.
Yeah.
Who's the edge rusher out of Virginia Tech, who just has absolute freaky athleticism. I think we talked about him recently.
We have, yeah.
Okay, yeah, where we talked about him being a punt gunner.
That'd be
and just
so fun.
being like a third or fourth edge that's just, crazy off the edge, and maybe they can teach him how to do some more stuff. Kind of what they won out of Quincy Roche last year, which ultimately didn't work. But
it didn't work.
So that's kind of just a flyer at the end of the 6th round. So I'm going to kind of go out of order here because in the next round, round 7 at pick 225, you have edge as both the nightmare and the reality. So in the span of 17 picks, it radically shifts. And why do you feel that way?
I feel like there's a couple guys at edge that might be there that would be definitely nightmare picks because I don't think they're actually going to be NFL players. And there's a couple guys that I think also might be there that would be good as that 3rd, 4th edge. Like I'm hoping more of a Barno in that spot.
Okay.
Like especially for the reality.
I don't think he gets there. Honestly.
No, I don't think so either, just because of the athleticism. But if he can make it to the 6th, maybe he can make it to the 7th. That's kind of where I think teams do understand with him though. Like unlike some other guys that test super well and but their tape is kind of iffy. He is not a pass rusher right now. Like he just straight up is not.
Well,
I don't see him.
I would say that's all he is.
Well, I mean, when I say he doesn't have the ability, like he's not going to come in and have a move set that you're comfortable with. Like he's like any of that.
Yeah,
he's a complete and utter blank slate, which is nice for if you're a team that likes to develop those types of guys. But I don't see him making any impact outside of special teams anytime soon, really. And that type of player, I think, could possibly fall that far. But outside of him, I think any other edge in that territory is going to be just, I don't know if he'll even make the roster. So,
all right. So that's like I said, round 7. My dream is more general.
Yes.
In that it's a big, long corner. And I have a few names because there's a few guys that I think would be appropriate in this range. The first one would be Vincent Gray from Michigan, 6'2", 192. Right. He's a bit of a reach, I think. But again, this is the dream segment. Another one, Jalen Watson, 6'2", 197 from Washington State. Isaac Taylor Stewart from Southern California. Just any kind of big, long corner. I know that they kind of tried that approach with Justin Lane, and it's not really working out so far. But in the early 7th, it's kind of a dart throw. You just find a big athlete that, maybe can be a better gunner on special teams than Justin Lane. And if that's a better pick.
Right. Yeah. Taking a shot on that type of profile, though, is always a good thing to do just because you never know if it works out. So,
right. So, now, for your dream, we talked about not taking quarterbacks late, but you've got some names here that are interesting as your dream in the early.
Yeah, I just really like the idea of because I'm also on the boat of I still would rather than not draft a quarterback at this point, so I'm taking that approach by thinking they're going to add somebody, right? Mm-hmm. So if you wait to this point, if a guy he has his issues for sure, and that's why I'm thinking he could be here, possibly, or I'd like if he'd be here. But Ellaby out of Western Michigan, I like some parts of his game. His mechanics are a little weird. We'll just kind of leave it at that. And he's really heavy RPO guy, kind of like in the same vein as like why I don't really like Matt Corral that much because I just didn't see him do a lot of things that aren't just RPO based. But I like the arm talent's not bad. The ball placement is really good from games I watched him. I watched a couple of them, and I think that he'd be a decent flyer to take and just have a guy that might be able to develop at least into a long-term backup on a cheap contract.
You're going to follow me here, but Caleb Ellaby is what Tua defenders think Tua haters
yes.
Tua is.
Yeah, I would say that's probably a really good way to think about it for sure. His game has been the RPO, and he's good at it, but it's not going to get
nobody throws a glance RPO like Caleb Ellaby.
Right, exactly. There you go. Yeah.
Nobody else throws any other throw like him in a bad way because everyone throws terrible. Because I'm not kidding. I don't think I've ever seen a quarterback with worse footwork that I've scouted.
It's just weird, and I like to think that because of how bad it was, and he was still productive in college. I think that maybe it can be improved upon. But in the 7th round, I'll take the guy that has a shot at it. Yeah. So
yeah. So I'll run quickly through my nightmares and realities because you gave yours as the edge possibility. So I mentioned offensive line, 2 guys, Stewart Reese and Cade Mays, big SEC linemen who, would probably be good run blockers, but probably would be terrible as pass blockers. So just don't draft them. No point. And then my reality is I couldn't really decide between the two, but if they don't go tight end earlier, Austin Allen from Nebraska, interesting name.
Good name.
He's 6'7", 253, big dude. Had some interesting plays. Like Nebraska ran a funky offense, and he was honestly a big part of it.
Yeah.
So I could see them taking a 7th round flyer on him. Maybe he develops into that tight end 3 behind the other 2 guys. Steelers also just love Big Ten tight ends right now. That's the thing. So, and then the other one would be nose tackle if they don't go with one in round 6, round 7. There's a lot of guys that are interesting names. Marquand McCall from Kentucky is one. Otito Ogbania if he falls a little bit. Taylon Humphrey from Louisiana, Noah Ellis from Idaho, even Kevin Atkins from Fresno State, or maybe Jonathan Ford from Miami. So a lot of options there to, ponder at nose tackle, where you kind of just want another body that can be a big gap stuffer if somebody gets hurt.
Yeah, I think that it's very possible that if they don't already have somebody picked out of defensive line earlier in the draft for depth, this is where they just take a shot just to make sure they get somebody without having to dip into the free agent pool. So
yeah. All right. Who is your 7th? Is the last pick, number 241? Who is your 7th round dream?
Really just any speedy receiver that maybe has special teams value or could play like a small role on the offense just to add, because I just don't like the depth right now. Receiver, even if we likely are going to be drafting at least one earlier in the draft, just adding someone who has some speed element to them. Just, again, mostly for special teams value and hopefully maybe a small role here and there on offense, but just adding to that depth there.
Yeah, if he falls, Taekwon Thornton. I think that was the pick in our sim draft.
Yeah, I don't see him making it too far just because his tape is better than I thought it was, because I watched some of him after he ran that, and I'm like, okay, I can see the speed element for sure. So, but
yeah, I'm not really. Maybe Kevin Austin at Notre Dame because he was another athletic testing freak. That's possible.
Sure. Somebody like that. Yeah.
But yeah, they might even be a name that we don't even know, honestly. Mine is Max Borghi, and this would be kind of assuming they don't take running back earlier, because this running back class is exceptionally deep, especially in day 3. Yeah. And Borghi was really highly thought of, I think 2 years ago before COVID, and then Washington State has had a whole bunch of mess up there, and he's been hurt. But basically, you're drafting Danny Woodhead.
Yeah, which I love Danny Woodhead.
Yeah.
So if you're getting Danny Woodhead at 7th round, sure.
Yeah, and he's a good little runner. Obviously, great pass catcher. Can run between the tackles decently well. Good vision, good explosiveness. So again, you're not looking for a starter to replace Najee, but this is a guy that is big time change of pace. Probably couldn't be more different than Najee if you tried.
Literally,
while being over 200 pounds.
Right.
But I think he'd be fun, especially as the last pick that you have in this draft.
Yeah, for sure.
So what is your nightmare?
I think, and again, I like your thought process with big long corners, but I feel like at this point in the draft, finding someone who has legitimate chance to be anything other than just a gunner / special teamer is pretty much non-existent at this point.
Yeah.
But I'd rather take a guy that either maybe has a chance to fill in some sort of role or just look at other options outside of D-back in general. So
yeah, that's fair. My nightmare is edge, and kind of the same reason you said is by this time, pretty much all the dudes are gone. They're just they're either not athletic enough, or they're just a speed demon off the edge that has no moves whatsoever.
Right,
and can't play on rundown. So
that's about it. Yeah, you're not finding a lot of guys with skill sets at this point.
So I'll counter your corner idea though with my guy. It's Jalen Armour Davis out of Alabama, who's an underclassman, 6 foot 197, and I agree that you're not going to find a starter here. I'm I'm looking for a guy to basically replace Justin Lane and maybe James Pierre as a special teams guy. And Armour Davis is obviously he's a highly recruited athlete, played at Bama, had some decent reps, but kind of just had a little bit of a rocky career, and maybe they can turn him into something that's just a decent special teamer, which I'd be fine with.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely at least has the athletic profile.
Yeah,
right?
And that's why you draft. That's how you draft gunners. You just draft length and speed and athleticism. So
right, and then you hope maybe he figures it out that he couldn't figure it out in college.
Yeah, exactly.
So he'd be a guy if he was still there this late. Obviously, then I think it kind of changes, that thought process for me for sure. So.
All right, so then you have reality. That's my reality pick, and then yours is offensive line.
I just feel like they're going to add somebody at this point. I haven't picked a lineman at this point, and even though I don't think it'd be a good pick, most likely, because we talked about earlier, like even in the 5th, 6th round, like you're kind of really struggling to find guys that can actually have a chance to play meaningful snaps for you. But this team does draft offensive linemen well, especially lately. I like to think that they're going to add someone to the group just to kind of, even if it's just more for camp competition or whatever the case may be. If there's anybody left that they kind of like, I think they could take one at this point.
This is a guy I have as like a fringe draftable UDFA guy, and I just draft him on name alone. I'm just gonna give you some clues, see if you can guess who it is. So he's an offensive lineman. Obviously, he's out of Auburn.
Okay.
His name is Brodarius Ham.
Oh God, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
I love that. Yes.
Like considering the last Steelers pick of last year was Presley Harvin III.
Yeah.
Give me another good name at the end of the 7th.
Give me another good name.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And like I don't really know much about him, but like he's 6'6", 334. So
just
big dude. Like be like kind of like the next Zach Banner, basically. Just
sure, why not?
We're here for a good time, not a long time.
Honestly, at this point, like I wish, like, as much as it'd be just nauseating and not anything that anyone would actually want, if we had like the 30-round drafts and like the crazy round drafts like they used to have,
and people were just
I'd have so much fun
drafting for bits, just drafting for jokes, basically.
Like with the MLB, like how they'll draft like players that
they'll just draft GM's kids, like GM's kids,
just
so
because
they get drafted.
Right, and it's so like I love that. I think it's hilarious. So like anything that we can do like that, especially this late, why not? Yeah,
I think a 10-round draft would be reasonable.
Yeah, because there's enough undrafted free agents every year that teams actually like that.
And like because there's like the story, like that story of was it Nick Fitzgerald or was it Tommy Stevens?
Stevens, with the Saints and whoever else,
the Panthers, the Panthers were going to sign him, and the Saints traded back into the draft just to draft him. Yeah, like let's just add on a few more rounds just so we can avoid that, and then I think you're going to really like trim down the UDFA pool.
Yes.
But I think then you kind of give those guys a little more security by and obviously less choice, which some people might say is not the best thing, but. Yeah, I think I would always love more draft stuff. So tack on a few more rounds. About.
Yeah, exactly. 10th round pick out of some weird Canadian college that you never heard of. Like stuff like that. Yeah.
Listen, like Canadian college football is coming up. There's guys.
It is. Yeah, there's guys. Yeah, but that's where those guys probably get picked. Like, why not? Let's do it. See what happens. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, that'll do it for us. We will be back next week, unless something absolutely insane happens.
Right.
We'll probably not be back. This week, just to recap one of the rounds, just because it's so split up. So we'll probably just wait until we might even record Sunday and then just publish it as soon as possible, just so we can get all of our thoughts on the whole class. In the meantime, Shane, let people know they can find you and your work.
Find me at Shane Kubas on Twitter, and always follow Steelers ATB. I'll be trying to tweet from it during the draft a little bit. We'll see how that goes because I will be out of town, so we'll see how it goes.
I'll just get the login.
Yeah, you might have to. Yeah, so you can, because then they'll know like, okay, the rambling's happening. Let's get going.
Especially on day 2, because we got 4 pounds of ribs from my in-laws that are like frozen, so we're just gonna defrost them on Friday when I'm working from home, and I'm just gonna slow cook them all day, and I'm very excited.
Sounds good, man. Yeah, awesome.
You can follow me at Mitchell T. Wolf, WOLFE. Like Shane said, make sure you're following Steelers ATB. Make sure you're following Around the Block. I just published my predictive first round mock, which I already hate every single pick I made.
Yeah, that's what happens. That's why I haven't posted one, because I'm like, I do one, and I'm like, nope, I don't like this anymore.
I'm working on a 7-round one. We'll see if I can get it in time for Wednesday. And then I'll hate all those picks all over again. I'll probably have at least one duplicate that I'll forget, and then I'll feel like an absolute idiot. But anyways, make sure you go to ATB Network. Check out everything everybody's doing over there in preparation for the draft. Thanks for tuning in. We hope to have you back next time.